Good evening, everyone. Today is July 15th, 2025. We are at the City Hall Council Chambers for Cape Canaveral City Council Workshop Meeting. I call this meeting to order. I should say we are at 100 Polk Avenue, Cape Canaveral, Florida, 32920, and it is 5 o'clock p.m. Councilmember Willis, would you please lead us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem Callum.
Here.
Mayor Morrison.
Here.
And Councilmember Willis.
Here. All are here. Thank you, council and city staff. At this time, we will receive public participation. This is a workshop. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you would like to speak, we do ask that you please fill out one of these cards provided at the front, and we'll make sure you're heard. So with that, if anyone, I do not have any cards right now from anyone who intends to speak. Oh, I see some out there. If you'd like, you can come on forward and we can get the cards. Thank you very much, Chetty. Thank you.
To help us with planning for that, and I'm just concerned that that seems to have been gone to the wayside, and any update on that and putting it back on the front burner would be greatly appreciated, because it was part of the visioning for the city and expressed very heartfelt by the residents, you know, back in the preliminary vision effort. The other thing I just wanted to mention is sometimes our tax base is perhaps misunderstood because a lot of our residents are second resident owners. In other words, they're not necessarily renting their place while they're away from here. But we do get their feedback when they come back into the city as to how our resources are being expended. And I must admit that it's troubling to a number of them that the proliferation of hotels and so forth is really changing the residential character of our city. So anything that we might do to such as we've done in the past, to plan more strategically for the visioning of the future for our city would be greatly appreciated. And I would like to just mention just the understanding by council that a lot of our residents, particularly in the condos, are not renting, but they're actually owning, and very much care what they return to when they come from their other home. So that's it. Again, Civic Hub as to where we are on that, the town center complex, the potential investment of other properties in the immediate area that to me would be a return on the investment for our vision for the future. That includes the Union Hall property and perhaps some contiguous properties, and perhaps there's some ways that we could get our hotels to return back to the community, you know, from what they've taken in the sense of away from our character, and perhaps contribute towards returning that to something we'd all be proud of.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Do we have any other one who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public participation. Did you want to speak?
Well, I wanted to hear what was going to be said, and then if I have a question or a comment, can I make it later on?
Unless council objects, we'll try to obviously we have a 6 p.m. meeting, but leave a little bit of time at the end to do some follow-up? Thank you. Okay, we'll close public participation, bring it back to the council. We are now at the discussion. Item number 5, we have one item tonight, the proposed fiscal year 2025-2026 budget and 5-year capital improvement plan. Council, unless there's a concern, I think our interim city manager can give us a quick overview, and then we can get into any questions or anything that we have and discuss.
Sure.
John?
So unlike last year, this year is going to provide some real challenges. And in front of council, there's a memo that states that our proposed millage for this year is going to be 3.9672 to achieve a balanced budget. But what that also includes is $747,000 out of reserves to make that number. That would allow us for everything that's in this budget to get it accomplished for this next budget year. This also puts our percentage of unobligated reserve down to 17.3, which is below the 20% for the city's fiscal policy of 20%. If council goes forward, when we're going forward here in the budget process and decided to decrease the proposed millage rate of 3.967, what it's going to do is it's going to result in cutting in and using more of our reserves. Just a couple major impacts of the budget this year. Last year, we had a millage rate reduced below rollback, and so in the fire department last year took the hit there and said, we won't get our fire engine till this next year, and then also add our 3 positions. So just major budget impacts this year. 1.7 million protective services budget. The police increased their budget by 573,000 due to increased salaries and benefits. Fire rescue budget increased 890,000 because they're purchasing the new fire truck this year. In addition, 3 new firefighter positions. This city hall's air conditioner is estimated to cost $325,000. Just a couple other highlights. This proposed budget, the fire and police budget is $8.2 million this year. The taxes for this are at 7.9. So the taxes based on the ad valorem we're presenting and we're cutting in the reserves doesn't even cover the fire and police this year. Okay? The contingency we put down to achieve our numbers at only $200,000 this year. And just a few other highlights. For the employees, our CPI is 2%. And Joey could show some numbers later, but we are among, if not the lowest, this city staff's taken the lowest CPI increase compared to the other cities in the county. We're only taking 2%. We're asking for 2%. And in addition, when we're going through the budget, you'll notice that in the organizational chart, the city's IT department is going to be a standalone department. We already have 2 people there, but instead of coming under administrative services, it will come under its own department, IT department, which because IT works for the whole city, and that department will come under the city manager directly instead of myself when I go back to the finance director. It won't come under me anymore. It would be coming under the city manager, and this is what we propose in this budget. I think that's basically it. I would just tell council that you did get some handouts here. We can discuss those later as they apply to this handout Joey gave out, as it applies to the effect of these millages on, to just give a perspective on a $100,000 house, a $200,000 house, a $300,000 house, a $500,000 house. Okay? I think that's enough for now. So Mayor, I turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Council,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, Councilmember Willis?
I think based upon what we're going to be discussing, we need to go ahead and hear what these mean and get an explanation because we're going right to the millage. So let's understand everything.
Okay, Mayor,
Yes, so the,
I could have
these-
Joey go ahead and
These
explain.
are, this document here with the blue,
Right, they're the graphs, and they kind of show you the effect of a change in millage, what it was previously, and then what we also provided was, and this is just for really council's, reference, was the 23-24 budget impacts that occurred when we went to rollback last year. So that's something that we could discuss if you'd like, but it may not be extremely relevant to the future. But I had Joey go ahead and pull that just in case we want to talk about it. So if it's okay with you, Mayor, we could have Joey explain.
yes?
Okay, so Joey, what we could start with here is I basically would go to the ad valorem-based property value. That would be this, and we don't have this on the thing, these were handouts. This would be this one here. Could everybody see that sheet? Okay.
Yep,
Okay, so Joey, just explain, basically, I think you could start with just the 25, 26 rollback, take it down to the midpoint and the effects, then the proposed millage that we're going after, and then if we decided that we did not want to infringe on 700 and some $1,000 of reserves, how high the millage would go. So if you'll explain that to council?
So on this sheet, there's 4 columns showing if someone owns a property that is valued at 100,000, 250,000, 300,000, or 500,000. So based on how much their property is appraised at, the rows show the increase in price versus this current fiscal year 25 that we're in. It'll show the difference in price in the upcoming fiscal year. So the first row, fiscal year 25 millage, is current year taxes that a property owner would pay. The row below it would show if we go to rollback in the upcoming year, how much additional taxes they would pay, which would be very close to zero. And then the rows below that, 2 rows below the rollback rate, we show the proposed millage. If we go to the proposed millage, we show the total dollar change compared to, or the total dollar change in the upcoming fiscal year versus the current fiscal year we're in. And the last row at the bottom is if we set the millage where we won't use any reserves, how much the increase for the property owner will have to pay. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I have one ancillary question. You may not know the answer, but I would like to eventually get the answer. Is how many homesteaded properties do we have?
I do not know off the top of my head. We can look into that.
We could get that for you, Councilmember Willis. I will have, from the Brevard Property Appraiser's Office, I'll get what's called the 403V, and it'll show you how many.
Well, on top of that, disabled veterans, if they're, depending upon their percentage of disability, have their taxes reduced by that. So it's interesting, I know I have a neighbor who is 100% disabled, pays no property tax. So it would be interesting to know, again, additionally, how much or how many properties are in that category.
I just looked that up. It's about, I could be off by a percentage or two. It's about 20% are homestead in this city.
That
Is
seems
that what
like
it
a
shows?
low, very
Is that what
low.
it shows, Mayor, right now?
And it's been like that for years.
Yeah, that's probably a
18%.
good assumption. I mean, that's probably that's pretty accurate. What I have to do every year anyway from the property appraiser's office, I have to get the 403V for tax purposes later on in the year, and they usually give me the updated. But, yeah, I agree with the mayor. I don't think that really changes much.
Well, then we must have a lot of rental properties,
Yeah.
a lot.
Lot.
You know, and you got all categories. You got veterans who, you know, people get homesteaded and they get X amount off. And then if you have a, like you said, partial disability or whatever, there's an additional amount. But if you are fully disabled, you don't pay taxes,
Well, I
not
wouldn't-
property taxes. Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Oh,
I
no,
just-
no,
I
me either, but
wanted
I'm
it
just saying
for
that
reference
is,
sake
that's a
to-
reality, yeah.
To see who's paying what, so, thank you.
And I'd like that information if you get that for Councilmember Willis.
Right, what I'll do is I'll get that, and it shows a lot, and I'll just send all the council, the whole council, the 403V.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time for Joey? I think he has explained the document we see in front of us under the 4 scenarios of property and the financial impact that would have based on the combined millage. Okay.
All right, Joey, let's see, go to, you could go to the uses, kind of said it already, but the use of reserves by fiscal year 26 millage scenario. I mean, that's just another, you've got it, that's good, Esther, you've got the right one up there. Okay, you could talk to that one.
So on this document, we show in each scenario, depending on which millage rate we choose to go with, what amount of reserves the city would have to use to make the budget balance. So at the top row where it says no reserves is if we use 0 reserves, we would have to have a total millage of 4.4559. And then as you go down, it shows how many use of reserves we would have to use at each millage rate, all the way down to rollback.
Okay.
Okay.
And additionally, the far right column where it says percent of reserves is based on each millage rate, the percent left, or the percent of reserves we would have. And as you see, if we have no reserves, we would have a 21%. If we go to rollback, we would have around 12%.
I have a question, Joey, about that. Is it in our code that we're supposed to have 21 or 20?
20%, yeah, city,
So if we went to rollback and it went to 12%, would that be a change in the code, or how would that?
no, and of course, Anthony's not here, but I don't believe there's a city policy that was passed by council back in, I'm going to say the early 2000s. It's been, I know it's been like this probably 20 years. But what I would say about that is that this is something that we go by for our city here at Cape Canaveral. But the question would be, if you fall below that, would council have to go in and somehow adjust that percentage? And I believe the answer is no. I mean, it's just that if you remember when James Moore briefed us at the audit in February, they basically came up where they said, you know, we were at 18.3% or 18.6%. And they said, this is something you need to watch, because if you got to watch how you adjust your taxes and how you're spending your money, because if you're at 18.6 and you continued on a trend, then your percentage could go down, and you got to be careful with that. So now what's good about the city is we've always stated about 20%. I mean, we've been really fiscally good about that. But with the adjustments that were made last year, and now the major budget impacts we're having this year, we've dropped below to 20%. But I don't think there's any action by council, no. But, and I think when I talked to some of the council members and they asked me, the GFOA state level is 16.7%, but this council 20 years ago or whenever, they decided they wanted Cape Canaveral to have 20% reserves. But it's acceptable by audit standards at 16.7. And we're briefed that every year by our auditors. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, the way that I've understood it is that fund balance 20% exceeds GFOA standards. So our city goes above and beyond, and we need to maintain 20%. And the code talks about what we need to do. So I think we would be required, subject to our city attorney's opinion, especially if we would go in knowing it was going to lower it, or the budget we passed was going to result in one of the percentages lower than that 20%. I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should put a budget that hits the 20%. And the scenarios that were shown shows a 21%. And then the proposed actually takes us below. Do we have an idea of where we are today, or I guess the last budget, as a percentage of reserves for the fund balance?
Yes, I think that's a fantastic question, because basically, when Joey and I are computing these and we're saying, hey, if we just go with the proposed, keeping the millage under 4% for the city at 3.962, we could use $747,000 of reserves. We were close to 4 million the last time we checked, so that would take us down to 3.2 million. That's where we came up with the 17.7%. So we're very close by using the proposed millage. To get it to 20%, yeah, Mayor, you're right, we'd have to go up to, that would probably take us to like I'm just estimating, maybe 4.199 or something like that to get it up to the 20, or maybe, well, actually probably about 4.2. So if we want it to stay at the 20, it's something council could do. Is the city okay having $3.2 million, God forbid something happens, as opposed to 4 million? Well, sometimes that might be a hard thing to determine, but the city has generally stayed around when it was at 20%. Of course, the numbers are changing, at 3.2 million most of the time. If you look in the past, we've always been around 3.2, 3.3. So, but because the way the numbers are panning out, whatever, it's almost taken us 3.9 million now that we have that stay at the 20%.
So we are at the 20% today?
Yeah, we're very close, I believe. The only thing is that we're moving forward with the new budget, so the new budget influences where we're going. But if you said, John, how much do we have? $4 million? We've got about $4 million, which right now, that puts us in a good spot at the 20% or above, a little bit above. But now we got to present a new budget that has new expenses, greater expenses, what have you, and that's why we're in this situation now. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
If If there's not any other questions, I think, Joey, you're working through these slides. Are there any more on this one?
I have nothing more to point out on this document, if no one has any questions on it.
I think we're good.
Okay. The next document we can go over is the document that has the graph with the blue and the orange on it.
The past 2 years proposed versus approved?
Yes, that is correct.
I've got it.
So this document, what it shows is over the past 2 fiscal years, fiscal year '24 and fiscal year '25, what the finance department has proposed we do as a budget and what has later been approved. And the difference has been over the past 2 years. 2 years ago, the difference was cutting $117,000, and last year, we ended up cutting $741,000. That is what this document shows.
Now, I would like to qualify this, Mayor, if I may, is that those were the impacts based on when we were at our proposed millage and approved millage. But a little bit prior to that, there may have been programs seeing where we were going to be, especially in '24. There were projects that were probably canceled or pushed out a few years because of we knew what the impact would be. So the revenue difference was 117K based on what we presented, but there are things we took out of the budget because we knew that, you know, the impacts would be much greater. And then last year, of course, we had the below rollback, which reduced our revenue by $741,000. So
I got a question on this one. So when we're saying proposed, I've got the budget from, that we adopted the current year that we're operating out of. The terminology proposed revenue, does that mean what we adopted?
no,
The terminology is, the proposed would be what we propose in July, for example, now, and then adopted, and what I call approved here, but is the adopted, is what we adopt for the final budget. And we adopt that the second budget hearing in September.
Okay, so the revenues ad valorem taxes, I'm looking at page 13 of this book, shows adopted at $6,390,249. And we base it off a 95% collection rate, right? We don't, and so is this based on 95%? And I guess why are those
Yes.
numbers different? than
Yeah, I
what-
believe that difference would be because we collect some late tax fees. That would be that $5,000 difference.
delinquent taxes and what have you. So that proposed rate is basically, it's like this book today. We put a proposed rate in that we're starting off with tonight, and that's what the proposed rate is, the 3.9672, that's what we're starting, that's the proposed. So that's really so whatever budget we present every year to council, when we give you this book in this meeting, that proposed rate is the one we're speaking of, because that is built into this budget, and that's what's going to dictate, you know, how much revenue we get and how much reserves we need to use. So that's what the proposed means. What's actually in this book today for this year, that's our proposed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Carry on, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and just to clear up that question, so we have a total of $6,000 that we also collect for delinquent, like John says, ad valorem, and also penalties. So that's what adds up to the 6,000 difference.
Thank you.
If If there are no more questions on this document, I believe we can go to the next one.
Great.
John, I think you can better explain this one.
Are we talking about the 23-24 budget impact? I don't know if council, we gave that to council just for reference. I'm not so sure we have to get into the impacts from last year. We basically told them there was a $741,000 impact when we went from proposed to rollback. And unless council wants to, I think we need to move forward and talk about, this budget, unless council wants to go back through the 23-24. That was just for reference though, so that's,
Okay. Fine with that?
Okay.
thanks, Joey.
Okay, so there's, those will be there as a resource for us, and council, any questions this time? I'll just start by saying when we say that in order to reduce the tax rate, we have to pull from reserves. I just want to speak in as literal as we can. I don't think that's accurate. When we, maybe, can we clarify that?
Yes.
The idea of, there are other places we can pull from other than our reserve?
Yes, I could qualify that.
Okay.
Okay. And the way I would qualify that is this, is what we're basically saying, what's in this budget with the projects that we want to do, okay, would require us to have a 3.9 millage rate, which would require, my mic is not, which would require us to use 747,000. Now, let me give you one example to qualify that, Mayor. For instance, council could look at this budget and look at the capital projects and say, you know what? We don't want to do the air conditioner for this building next year, 325,000, 350,000. We want to push that out a year. What that's going to do, that's going to reduce the reserves by that much. Council may look at the other projects and say, we don't want to do this other project, and thereby reducing. So really it's a trade-off, because if you don't want to do certain things this year, that's how you're reducing. The only reason we're using reserves is based on the projects we've selected to do. But when council starts looking at those and they want to go ahead and maybe say we're pushing those out a year, then that starts to reduce the reserves we're using.
In other words, we do not have to transfer or utilize, we can maintain the reserve amount. If we
That's
remove
correct. If you,
air conditioner as an example. or-
if you so choose, Mayor, you could, yes, that's how you could reduce.
Yeah, I think reserves need to be at 20%. I don't think we should touch that. Police and fire, I understand it's increased. I think we can all learn more about that, but I think I understand it. We don't have to touch that. I don't think we should. So that's my point, is there are other areas in the budget. CIPs are easy because they're, finite, tangible amounts of money, and we've often debated the capital improvement projects. But we could also look at other line items in the budget, which we've done that too as well, I think, and reduce. And so I think in the last meeting or two, or the workshop meeting, I have no desire to increase taxes 1 penny. I actually want to reduce taxes and figure out ways to make the budget work for everyone. And if it means capital projects, fine. But police, fire, reserves are extremely important. And I'd put infrastructure, maintenance, sewer, wastewater right up there with them. And, but that doesn't mean that an expenditure this year maybe can't happen until next year. Last year, our fire department was able to be flexible and work with us there. And this year, I think I'm ready to do that. And our deputies, Brevard County Sheriff's Office, obviously, that's increased as well. So that's where my head is, and I'll stop there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Jackson?
Okay, so I've spent the last week, I can barely see, doing a historical analysis because as we look at the times that we've gone through the pandemic, we had runaway inflation during those years. We had a change in the demographic of our city, truly. We had more investors that have come in to our city and that sort of thing. So what I have done is I went through from 2016 to 2026 with each one of the books, and I did a comparison. I highlighted the sections for expenses and revenue and everything that literally leapt up 100%, 50% or more. Not saying that it's due to any misdeeds, but because we've had unprecedented times, we need to look at what has occurred with some of these things. So for example, in 2019, 2020, the personnel costs for code enforcement was at $343,180. From that time until 2024, 2025, it jumped to $753,452. It has now dropped back down. So there are things that'll cause that to happen. We had a shift in personnel and that kind of thing. But that's an example of this analysis that I've done. In our leisure services, we had in 2019, 2020, our personnel and all of the costs related, benefits and everything else, was at $354,399. It is now over $1,171,794. That is an extreme jump. That's $700,000 increase.
Which one was that?
That was leisure services.
Okay, thank you.
Community affairs. And so, and I know there was some shifting of groups that I noticed. So like there were some that it didn't start out as leisure services and community affairs. During that time, there were some people brought into that group, I guess. But I'm noting these changes because if we don't look at this on a bigger picture, every year we get this budget and it says, we need to do this. Here's the CIPs we want. That's all great, but we're not looking at the trend analysis on any of it. So I spent 16 hours a day putting a trend analysis together for it. So, and for example, there was one little group, it jumped from 37,885 and doubled, which may be because they added a person. That wasn't a very big number. But I went through, did that with operating expense, personnel salary, all of that, with the capital outlay. There were some big jumps on certain things, and I know that there were things that occurred within that group, but it helps us track the trends because if we don't look at those things as well, we'll never truly have a grasp of what our budget is really doing. And we had unprecedented times over the last 5 years during that pandemic. We had community, just for example, the operating expense for community development and code enforcement in 2021 was, 2021 was 100,656, and it stayed fairly consistent all the way up to now. But there are some of them in infrastructure maintenance, which makes sense. It jumped from 398,841 to, in 2026, 679,347. Now, why? Because we've ignored, during the community center C5 building, we ignored a lot of the regular maintenance, and we're catching up on it. But I went through tracking these things, because without knowing this, we are having these big jumps. For example, another one, Leisure Services, Community Affairs, 2019 to 2020, it was at 168,808. It's up to 569,989. So, and there's these increases. Now, there's also increases that are seen from the hotels, is my guess, in solid waste, which in 2023, 2024, we had $1,804,928. It increased to $2,147,674, so doubled. And that was during those times where we had 11 hotels built. So when you look at that and look at some of those things, the trending, I think, helps us analyze. I actually agree with you in saying that I want reserves. As a citizen, I want reserves. The worst thing you can do to yourself is not have reserves. But I think we need to look at some of these other things too, because a jump from 364,000 to over 1 million, 1.1 million in leisure services, I'd like to know, how many employees do we have? What created that jump? It's hard to know when you're not looking at a trend analysis. And I look at trend analysis because all of the projects that they've given to us as far as staff are, to me, valid projects that we need. Most of them, there's a few that are a nice to have, but mostly they're all what we need to have. But, there are some of those that had jumped, and I'm like, how could this be? Some of them, it made sense, like with the solid waste. That's the hotels. We have 1,700 rooms up there now, in excess of. So that's going to be a lot of wastewater, and that kind of thing. But I think that this is a helpful analysis when you look at it. The same thing with the capital overlay, because we had some jumps in it. For example, leisure services during the time that the C5 was being built, it jumped up to 844,000 one year, and you could tell that's when the C5 was built. But it gives us the ability to look at these things, and I think that it's worth our time to try to understand the entire big picture, because just going by CIPs every year, I did that last year learning, and this year I'm like, it doesn't make much sense, because our budget keeps jumping by 4, 5, 6, 7 million every year in a city with 20% of the homes homesteaded that we just heard, that has 9,942 residents or something like that. I'm not exact on that number. Mickey probably knows it off the top of her head, or Mayor Pro Tem. But to me, the jumps that are really severe, we have to look at that and figure out what is causing this increase. And if it's something that's valid, we know we have to deal with it. If it's something that we can impact in any way, counter impact it, then that would be good. As I said, that I know that the Leisure Services Department cut back a whole bunch of things that were there you know, on their wish list, and we appreciate you working with us on those things, Molly. Did you have a question? I would love to hear that. Thank you. Let me get to where I can write it down because I don't remember as much anymore.
I'll give you a second. That way you can be clear and the conversation can flow with some more information.
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate
You
that.
ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So as you noted, when the C5 came online, we had to hire more staff. When I inherited this project in March 7th of 2022, the C5 hadn't opened yet. I don't know what the previous director, and I actually had this conversation with John today to see if he remembered. I mean, a lot has happened between now and then, and now in the pandemic when a lot of this stuff was actually, should have been, at the very least, being discussed or planned. And to safely operate that facility, we need no less than 2 employees at that front desk at all times. So our current staffing for that building is 4 full-time and 1 part-time. That way somebody can take a vacation without leaving somebody solo, because if someone is having an issue and there's only 1 person at the desk gets left unattended, people can walk in, anything can happen, and also that's not good customer service because they're somewhere else and no one can answer the phone. So that's that building.
Okay.
So right after that, the very next year, the Cape Center came online. That has 1 full-time person and 1 part-time person. Nancy Hansen has the same. When I was in leisure services prior to the other 2 buildings coming online, there was 4 full-time people and 2 part-time. I was one of those part-time people at one point. And then one of the challenges that all of you have heard about is being able to keep up with maintenance. For years, up until I believe either last fiscal year or this fiscal year, we had 1 maintenance person, 1 guy taking care of 27 acres. We are now up to 3 maintenance, which puts it down to 7 acres a person, give or take. And they also assist with some of the stuff in the buildings because obviously they have some technical expertise that some of our programs and facility coordinators do not have. So they assist them, but we don't have any exterior companies doing our cleanings. So that is all done in-house. And when it comes to our projects and our maintenance, we do as much as possible in-house. So the increase you saw, yes, it's large, but taking on a big 2-story community center with a splash pad, taking on a small cultural facility, and then kind of thinning the herd a little bit and spreading the wealth from what it used to be at the Nancy Hansen and spreading that out where it's most needed. Those are the changes that you're looking at.
Okay. And does it include any of the other, like, cultural affairs or any of that? Because I saw that had kind of moved from one department to another back when, as I was doing this analysis.
July of 2019, I was pulled out of the Culture and Leisure Services Department. With my departure, the culture left the leisure. So I was, for a brief window, Cultural and Community Affairs Department, where I did the preliminary planning for what was going to happen at the Cape Center, plus I did all of the communications website, all that other stuff, the socials. When Gustavo Vergara departed when they were changing things around in March of 2022, all of those got combined into one. So that's when it became Parks, Recreation, and Community Affairs. Because I brought everything I had to the table, and then my deputy director, John Mayberry, filled the role that Gustavo did, which is mainly managing a lot of my projects and overseeing some of the maintenance stuff because that ties into the projects.
So that was Parks and Recs, Leisure Services, and Cultural that is together, or
Well, Leisure Services
Community
went away.
Affairs.
Yeah, Community Affairs, Parks, Recreation, and Community Affairs.
okay.
After years of answering the phone over there and saying Leisure Services, no one knew what I was talking about. So we just had to bring it back to some common nomenclature.
Okay. And so does these totals that you gave me, Molly, do they include community affairs, or is that in addition to
Yeah.
it? Okay, that includes
Yeah.
community affairs. Okay, I appreciate that, because it's really hard to look at it this way and know, but I know there's, but that,
Yeah, at this time, for the first time since I've taken over this position, we are fully staffed and people can actually take PTO or people can get sick and we have enough people to move around if need be.
understood. Great. Thank you so much for that explanation on that.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
No.
Councilmember Jackson, Mayor, if I could, I'd like to,
Before you
Oh,
do,
go ahead.
absolutely, just want to note that we are 10 minutes till, and I did want the public to have an opportunity to speak. And I need to say this before you speak. We're going to need to hold another workshop
Sure.
or extend the time. This is a 22% tax increase, and I agree with Councilmember Jackson's points and the trends. So, and the other thing I want to raise before we've got an incoming city manager. And so I know we have deadlines, but I would push them all and think that the state of Florida would even be patient with us, knowing our circumstances and our city attorney, that we have our city manager, once contracted, involved in this process. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
okay, I just need 2 minutes. So Councilmember Jackson, you said it goes beyond capital projects. You said you need to look at the big picture. And then you also said that if you saw the other things that drive this, and if they were justified, then you would have to react to it accordingly. So, what I'd like to do for council by close of business tomorrow is we will provide council by department, each position with each salary, and those things will roll up by department, which you had asked me earlier in the week if you could have that. And I believe then you will see that'll add perspective. So when you go through each of these departments, and you could say, so they got that many people, what did they do, what did they do? You will find out that the 66 people that we have on staff, the full-timers, are fully justified to make this city run the way it needs to. And I'm going to provide by department tomorrow those numbers, which will help you understand.
And I want to say, interim city manager, I'm not going after personnel. What I'm going after is trend analysis. Because, Molly just explained to me why and how they're staffed. Now it makes total sense to me. But when you're looking at the old budget versus what it is now, that's a huge increase from $340-something thousand to $1.1 million. So having the understanding of why did that happen? Now, like I just said before, so it's not looking at employees as much. I'm looking at all of it. I'm looking at the capital outlay. I'm looking at the operating expenses, because to get control of a $40 million budget, you have to look at it all. That's what I do. Now, I would appreciate that, just because with listening to Molly, that gave me perspective that I needed to understand. We're not overmanned in the Cape Center. We're not overmanned in one of the other places. So that would be a good thing for all of council to have an understanding, I think, personally. But like the solid wastewater increase, that was pretty easy to figure out, right? So these are the things I'm looking at, though. It's not necessarily, I'm not going after employees. I don't want you to think that. I'm looking at how do we get in a $40 million budget, and I mean literally break that down with 9,000 people in your city. If for some reason, and that's not going to happen, but let's say I had to pay it as a citizen, that's a whopping lot of money that we're obligating for our taxpayers. So where inflation was out of control, we had this weird world before, I'm trying to look at any way that we can to get some of those things under control. So
Okay.
that's all.
And that's why I want the council see by department all the folks, and I know you're not coming after staff, I understand it. But one thing I want to add too, and last thing, is remember, during this period, the government gave us $5.2 million that we used for ARPA, okay? So we're not getting any more ARPA money. So everything's relative the way it starts flowing together. Because I don't have an extra $5 million in the 2 or 3 years coming up. So that's where it starts to impede on the budget. That's all I have.
Exactly. And because of that, John, that's why what you're saying is exactly right. We don't have those ARPA funds, right? We don't have that extra money that we got. So that's why I'm looking at how do we control this monster that's rolling out of control? And it's not just our city. It's all cities this is happening to from what I'm seeing. So that's why I'm looking at it this way. You know, just trying to analyze it.
Okay, that's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. We're at 5:56. Would anyone from the public like to speak? And council, we're going to probably have to run over and delay our meeting, but in the meeting, we are going to have an item on the ad valorem tax, so we're going to have a chance to maybe talk there as well. But unless council objects, would you like to speak, Andrea? Yes, please come forward.
I just have a question on the state level. We're hearing all kinds of news reports that Governor DeSantis wants to eliminate the property tax. Now, whether or not that happens remains to be seen. But in the event that that did happen, where would we get our revenue? Have you given any thought to this possibility? Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Could,
Yes.
Andrea Shakey.
thank you, just for the sake of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Willis?
To answer Ms. King's question, there has been a House Select Committee appointed to address property taxes. And they are doing research and trying to provide some direction on where funds would come from. I think they're going to find that it's not going to be very palatable to eliminate property taxes, is my opinion, so. Oh, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if Councilmember Jackson could provide her research to staff, and I'm sure they need it for the public record since she introduced all those numbers, but let them be able to look at it and do comparisons and analysis on it as well. And of course, we would all get a copy as well. So, thank you.
And I want to add, I've done computations. Joey and the whole team was able to get some, BSNA has some really cool reporting that can help us make well-informed decisions going back 5 years with the proposed budget. We've said this in the past, it's a scavenger hunt going back and forth and putting it together. So the most expeditious meeting, I think, will be a combination of working with the city staff and utilizing BSNA's reporting capabilities today to give some different perspectives and views. And it wouldn't shock me if they have the ability to do a trend. I know it can export to a spreadsheet, and so you'd be able to pick up on that really quick.
Cheese and crackers, thanks for letting me know after spending like 5 days, 16 hours a day doing this. I'm almost blind.
Is there,
Mayor
I
Pro
should
Tem?
ask
can
staff.
we get a copy of both that?
This is what Joey, I would imagine, can absolutely can email it out. It was the last report that you had recently sent.
And I would like what Kay has too, is shared with the council.
And I'm not quite through. I've got a couple little gaps in certain years where I was going by books, but I'll get that finished up and get that out to the interim city manager so that what you're looking at may be essentially the same thing, but we'll share.
Awesome. I would just like to say, looking at the budget for this year and years in the past, you know, I had questions about all these hotels and when are we getting more impact fees from the ones that are going up? And then also, looking through the budget, we hardly get, if any, grant funding. And it used to be a big thing in our city. We did a lot of projects with grant funding. I wonder, you know, as we look at the employees, if it wouldn't be worthwhile hiring a grant writer. I think that's something we need to think about too. That would help our budget. I mean, new sources of revenue, besides the taxpayers, thinking outside the box for other ways we can increase revenue. That's all I was thinking right now. Thank you. But I do think we need definitely another 1 or 2 budget meetings and a standalone meeting where we're not rushed out, you know.
Yes. So perhaps we can schedule that either at the end of the regular council meeting, during reports, or whenever is most appropriate during the tentative millage rate item. Councilmember Davis, I know that you're okay. Okay. And I should have asked, if anyone else intended to speak during the public, we would ask that you do that at the next meeting, which we'll be rolling into very shortly. If there's not anything else, I think we're going to go ahead and need to adjourn. And Councilmember Willis?
Well, I just want to point out that we have a number of excellent staff members who can write grant requests and proposals, and I've seen the success of those. And I think we just need to give them the tools that they need, so.
Councilmember Jackson?
And one last quick statement. I've talked with Mr. Carlisle, and I would like a city engineer that can get rid of some of the expense we pay on doing engineering studies. And I know that our interim city manager has said they're taking a look at that, so just so you know, that's kind of in the pike, because they would literally have the ability where we spend $300,000 on a survey, an engineering study. If they do one, they've paid for themselves and would be available for us for multiple projects. So I want to let you know that they are working on that, and that's really exciting for me. I think that's a great way to help with our budget.
Thank you. I think those are all great ideas. If there's not anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn.